Have you ever considered testing your TypeScript types? Now that may seem like a crazy idea, but there are cases where it makes sense. Let me show when it does make sense and when it probably doesn't. For most application developers, you probably don't need to test most of your types because they're not complicated. This is an example of a very simple type. There's really nothing to test here. But when you start to learn advanced TypeScript, what you learn is advanced TypeScript contains all sorts of logic inside of it. Now this type is more complex. Complex types can contain conditionals, recursion, looping, constraints, and more. In those cases, testing your type starts to make a lot of sense because there's a lot of complexity there. And it becomes especially important if that type is published via a package or library. Now you might wonder, is it hard to test TypeScript types? No, it's actually surprisingly straightforward. To test a TypeScript type, you basically need to create a couple of utility types to help you out. I've got a type here equal that checks whether two things are equal, so I can pass it two types. One, the type under test, and then my expected result. And then I've got this other helper down here that merely just expects something to be true. Notice that it says t extends true. So if whatever I pass to it isn't true, it will fail to compile. Now, the thing that's interesting about testing types is if it won't compile, then you know the test has failed. You don't actually have to run your tests because it's a compile time check. So for example, if we come over here, I've got this recursive partial that I want to test. And yeah, it's pretty complicated. Well, down here, I've created a person type, and you'll notice that it has a nested property on here. What I want to make sure is that when I call recursive partial of type person, that it looks like this. And if it doesn't look like this, I want my test to fail. You'll notice that it will fail if I take one of these optionals off. I will get a compile time error. That is my test effectively failing. Notice what I'm calling here is expect and equal, those two utility types that I've imported up here at the top from that previous example. And that's really all you need to test your complex types. Now, of course, there is more to this topic, and I dive into all sorts of advanced TypeScript topics on my new course, TypeScript Deep Dive on DomeTrain.